Introduction: Why Lift Matters. Everyone faces waves. Some are obvious: deadlines, illness, conflict. Others are quieter: worry, tension, fatigue, self-criticism. Life constantly moves beneath our attention, pushing, pulling, and sometimes overwhelming us. Most of us respond the same way: we brace, resist, and try to plow through. That approach works sometimes, but it comes at a cost. Energy is drained. Stress accumulates. Even small challenges feel heavier. This book offers a different approach. It is not about escaping life, ignoring pain, or thinking positively as a cure-all. It is about learning to glide above the waves, reducing friction, and stabilizing your attention and nervous system. What you will learn. This is a book about practice, repetition, and momentum. You will learn how to turn a simple, meaningful sentence into a mental wing that carries attention. Reduce the mental friction that makes stress, worry, or pain feel overwhelming. Strengthen neural pathways so calm, focus, and stability arise naturally. Apply these principles to daily life without effortful control. The effects unfold gradually. At first, practice may feel mechanical. Over time, it becomes automatic. Lift emerges. Why a sentence? Language is one of the brain's most efficient tools for organizing experience. A sentence can encode identity, orientation, expectation, and emotional tone. When repeated thoughtfully, it becomes familiar, prioritized, and automatic. This is not about belief or persuasion. The brain does not need to accept the sentence. It simply needs repeated exposure to build the neural pathways that support stability and lift. The hydrofoil metaphor. A hydrofoil boat looks ordinary at rest. Waves hit it full force. But once it gains speed, a wing beneath the hull generates lift. The hull rises. Drag drops. Movement becomes smooth. Your mind can work the same way. Early repetition is effortful, like a new driver navigating every control. With practice, the wing carries you effortlessly above the waves of stress, distraction, and tension. Who this book is for? People who want to reduce mental friction and improve resilience. People curious about how attention, repetition, and identity shape experience. Skeptical readers who appreciate practical, observable processes. Anyone willing to experiment with a simple, low-risk mental practice. You do not need faith. You do not need belief. You do not need special skills. You only need attention and repetition. How to read this book. Read at your own pace. Notice your own experience as you go. Apply the practice gradually, like learning to drive or slowly gaining speed in a hydrofoil. Observe the subtle changes. Keep what works. Let go of what doesn't. This book is both a guide and an experiment, a way to see what happens when the mind learns to glide. By the end, you may notice a difference in how you meet life's waves. You may feel less resistance, more stability, and more energy for what matters. The journey begins with learning to drive, and with noticing how the mind can learn to lift. Chapter 1. Learning to drive and rising above the waves. Everyone knows the feeling: sitting behind the wheel for the first time, your hands gripping the steering wheel, your foot hovering over the pedals. Every movement is deliberate. Every action demands attention. You are constantly thinking: press the brake, check the mirror, turn the wheel, signal, watch the road. Your brain is fully awake, every neuron on high alert. You cannot talk, daydream, or relax without risk. You are fully present in the effort of control. This is how learning anything complex feels. And it is exactly the point. The brain is forming new pathways, encoding sequences of action that are unfamiliar. Each repetition strengthens connections. Each successful action reinforces coordination. From effort to automaticity. After days and weeks of practice, something remarkable happens. You can now drive while thinking about other things. You can chat, plan, or listen to music without losing control. The tasks that once demanded your full attention now run on autopilot. This is the transition we are interested in. Conscious effort fades. Patterns become automatic. The brain has learned a new default, a reliable pathway that no longer requires constant monitoring. Learning to drive is a small-scale model of what happens when the mind learns to use a stabilizing thought. Just as your neural circuits eventually allow you to multitask behind the wheel, your brain can eventually adopt a repeated mental sentence as an automatic support system. Introducing the hydrofoil. Now imagine a boat moving through water. At low speed, it behaves like any other boat. Waves hit it full force. Resistance is constant. Every swell slows it down. But this boat has a hidden secret, a hydrofoil wing beneath the hull. Once the boat gains speed, the wing generates lift. The hull rises above the water. Friction drops dramatically. The waves are still there, but their impact is reduced. Movement becomes smooth, effortless, and more stable. The hydrofoil is a more poetic and continuous version of learning to drive. Driving illustrates discrete skill learning, from effortful to automatic. The hydrofoil illustrates the ongoing experience of stability and reduced friction in life. The connection to the mind. The sentence you will practice in this book acts like the hydrofoil wing. At first, repetition feels effortful, just like learning to drive. You will have to remember to engage it, return to it when your attention drifts, and patiently persist. Over time, the sentence becomes a default mental pathway. Your nervous system begins to recognize it as familiar and stabilizing. It reduces internal friction, stabilizes attention, and allows you to rise above the waves of stress, worry, and discomfort, just as the hydrofoil rises above the water. Lift, not escape. It is important to be clear, rising above the waves does not mean escaping reality. Pain, challenge, and difficulty will still exist. Lift does not make life perfect. What it does is change how you meet those challenges. You expend less energy resisting, recover faster, and create space for calm, focus, and resilience. Like the hydrofoil, you move above turbulence, not through it. What to expect next? In the coming chapters, we will explore the mechanics of the hydrofoil and how lift works, why repetition creates neural pathways, how attention, meaning, and identity work together to reduce friction, how to apply this to stress, pain, and daily life. Think of this chapter as the first pass on the water. You have felt the effortful learning. Now you will begin to build momentum, install the wing, and skim above the waves. Chapter 2. How a hydrofoil works, lift, speed, and momentum. If learning to drive showed you how the brain moves from effort to automaticity, a hydrofoil shows what that feels like in motion. At low speed, a hydrofoil behaves like any other boat. Its hull sits in the water, waves push directly against it, and every swell slows progress. Resistance is constant. Friction is high. Even the smallest waves demand energy. Nothing special happens yet. The boat moves forward, but it plows through the water, just as the novice driver plows through every step of steering, braking, and signaling. The threshold of lift. Then something changes. As the boat gains speed, water begins to flow over the hidden wing beneath the hull. At a certain point, the wing generates lift. The hull rises. Drag drops. Movement becomes smooth. The boat glides above the waves, no longer fully absorbing every impact. This is the hydrofoil threshold, the moment when effort gives way to motion carrying itself. The human equivalent. The human brain works in a remarkably similar way. Early in any new mental practice, focusing attention, learning a habit, repeating a sentence, effort dominates. You must remember to engage, return your focus when it drifts, and consciously monitor the process. Progress is often slow, and the effects may feel invisible. But repetition changes the system. Over days and weeks, neural pathways strengthen. Attention becomes more stable. Patterns become automatic. Eventually, the brain favors the familiar path, not because it's inherently true, but because repetition creates priority. The mental wing has touched the water. Lift is possible. Momentum matters more than force. A hydrofoil does not rise because someone pushes it upward. It rises because speed is sustained. Too little momentum, and it stays submerged. Too much effort in short bursts, and lift is lost. The same is true in the mind. Effort alone does not create lift. Consistent engagement, steady attention, and repetition is what allows the practice to become automatic. Quick, intense sessions are far less effective than calm, repeated motion over time. Attention is essential. One crucial point: lift comes from engaged thought, not from words spoken aloud. A sentence said out loud can pass through the mouth while the mind is elsewhere, planning, worrying, daydreaming. Sound alone does not change neural patterns. The wing must touch the water. The sentence must be thought and experienced in the same mental space where stress, self-talk, and emotion arise. This is why silent repetition is essential. It is the only way to generate consistent lift. What you'll learn next. In the next chapter, we will introduce the wing itself, the simple sentence that will help you rise above the waves. You will learn why its structure matters, how to repeat it silently, and how steady, engaged attention builds lift over time. At first, you may feel effortful, just like your first drive. But over time, you will notice the threshold of lift, when the wing carries you and your attention moves above the waves, almost automatically. Chapter 3. Installing the wing, the sentence that lifts. By now, you've seen two things. Learning a skill, like driving, begins as effortful and conscious, then gradually becomes automatic. A hydrofoil rises above the waves once speed and momentum allow the wing to generate lift. Your mind can do something similar. You can train it to glide above the waves of stress, worry, discomfort, and distraction. But to do this, you need a wing, a stabilizing pattern that the brain can learn and rely on. Introducing the wing. The wing in this book is a simple sentence. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. At first, it may feel strange, unfamiliar, even awkward. That's normal. Like learning to steer for the first time, your mind must adjust to something new. But over time, repeated attention to this sentence can create automatic neural patterns, the mental equivalent of a hydrofoil lifting a boat. Why this is not an affirmation practice. Many people are familiar with affirmations, sentences spoken aloud to encourage change. While affirmations can be motivating, they often miss the point. Spoken words can pass through your mouth while your mind thinks about something entirely different. Sound alone does not create neural change. Lift comes from thoughtful repetition, not speech. A hydrofoil wing must meet the water to generate lift. The sentence must meet your mind, in the space where emotion, stress, and self-talk arise. How thought repetition works. Silent repetition engages the brain in a way that spoken words cannot. Neural circuits involved in attention and regulation are strengthened. Meaning is processed deeply, not just heard. Identity-linked patterns begin to form naturally. You do not need to force belief or convince yourself of anything. The brain changes because it encounters the pattern repeatedly, consistently, and meaningfully. Practical guidance. Repeat the sentence silently in your mind. Allow it to arise naturally, without forcing focus. When attention drifts, return gently to the sentence. Consistency matters more than intensity. Even brief, repeated engagement builds momentum. Over time, the sentence will no longer feel effortful. It becomes a default pathway that lifts your attention above the waves automatically. Why the words matter. Each part of the sentence is intentional. My establishes ownership. This is yours. Perfect righteous spirit signals alignment, integrity, and identity. Is healing frames an ongoing active process. My body integrates mind, spirit, and self-experience. Together, these words form a mental wing capable of creating lift. You may notice subtle changes in attention, mood, or awareness even before the full effects appear. Connecting back to the hydrofoil. Just as a hydrofoil requires the right angle, speed, and position to rise, your mind requires repetition, engagement, and consistency. At first, you may feel effortful. But with time, the wing will carry you effortlessly, stabilizing your attention and reducing friction in daily life. Looking ahead. In the next chapters, we'll explore how the sentence becomes a deeply wired neural pattern, how it moves from conscious effort to automatic lift, how it affects stress, pain, and emotion, how it gradually shapes identity and attention. Think of this chapter as the installation phase. The wing is in place. The boat is ready. Now comes the journey over the waves. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. Chapter 4. Building momentum. You've met the wing, your sentence that lifts attention and steadies your mind. Now it's time to put it into motion. Just as a hydrofoil does not rise the instant it hits water, your wing will not produce effortless lift the first time you repeat it. Momentum must be built patiently and consistently. The first passes. In the first days of practice, repetition feels mechanical. Thoughts wander. Distraction creeps in. You may wonder whether it works at all. That is exactly what should happen. Think of the hydrofoil on its first runs. The pilot accelerates, adjusting the angle of the wing, feeling the resistance of water. Each pass over the waves is creating small changes in flow, though the boat hasn't yet lifted. With the sentence, the brain is doing the same thing. Neurons are firing together. Each repetition activates a small network of brain cells. Synapses are strengthening. Over days, the connections between neurons become more durable. Attention is being trained. Even when your mind drifts, returning to the sentence strengthens the mental track. Neuroscientists call this principle neurons that fire together, wire together. Each repetition is like a pass over the water, slow, deliberate, and invisible in its effect, but cumulatively powerful. Familiarity begins to lift. After a week or two, you may notice subtle changes. The sentence arises more easily, without effort. Moments of calm appear after repetition, even briefly. Your attention drifts less toward tension, worry, or self-criticism. These small shifts are the beginnings of lift. The hydrofoil is starting to rise, the water is less turbulent beneath you. You may not yet be skimming above the waves, but the first hints of effortless motion are appearing. The wing in action. Each word of your sentence continues to matter. Righteous signals internal alignment and steadiness. My anchors ownership and identity. Is healing keeps the motion ongoing rather than fixed. The structure of the sentence interacts with your attention in the same way a hydrofoil wing interacts with water. Repeated exposure shapes flow and reduces friction. Your nervous system begins to recognize the pattern, subtly responding with lowered tension and more stability. Consistency over intensity. You do not need to repeat the sentence perfectly or obsessively. What matters is momentum, not force. Intentional repetitions each day are enough to start the neural and emotional lift. Just as the hydrofoil needs steady acceleration to rise, your mind needs steady practice to build momentum. Pressure, frustration, or over-analysis will actually increase drag, like forcing the hydrofoil wing into the water at the wrong angle. Signs of early lift. You notice small windows of calm during stressful moments. The sentence starts to surface spontaneously. Thoughts that normally pull you downward have less grip. These are not miracles. They are the predictable effects of neural conditioning and attention training. Over the coming weeks, momentum will increase, and the hydrofoil wing will begin to carry you more consistently above the waves. Your task this week: repeat your sentence. When your mind drifts, return gently, no judgment. Observe the early signs of lift, small moments of calm, fleeting focus, or spontaneous awareness of the sentence. Momentum is the bridge between effort and lift. Each repetition is a tiny stroke of speed across the waves, shaping the path your mind will follow for weeks to come. With patience, the wing you've installed will begin to do what wings are made for: support effortless gliding above the turbulence of daily life. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. Chapter 5. Crossing the Threshold. Every hydrofoil has a moment that cannot be rushed. Below a certain speed, the boat behaves like any other vessel. It plows through the water, pushed around by the waves. Then, almost quietly, something changes. The wing begins to generate lift. Resistance drops. The boat rises. This chapter is about that moment in the mind. After several weeks of steady repetition, many people notice a subtle but unmistakable shift. The sentence begins to appear on its own. Not because you decided to repeat it, but because your brain has learned it. The wing is now doing its work. From effort to automaticity. Early on, repeating the sentence required conscious effort. You had to remember it, choose it, return to it again and again. This stage engaged the brain's executive systems, the parts responsible for focus, planning, and self-monitoring. But repetition changes the rules. As the sentence becomes familiar, it begins to move out of conscious control and into the brain's automatic systems. The mind no longer asks whether to use it. It simply offers it, especially during moments of stress, fatigue, or emotional turbulence. This is the neurological equivalent of crossing the hydrofoil threshold. Why the sentence starts to appear on its own. The brain is designed to conserve energy. Once a pattern proves useful, calming, or stabilizing, the brain favors it. Well-rehearsed mental pathways gain priority, while less used ones fade into the background. By this stage, the sentence has become a strongly wired neural pattern. Competing thoughts require more effort to dominate attention. Familiarity creates a sense of truth, even without deliberate belief. This is not self-deception. It is how the brain handles repetition and meaning. The shift from conscious repetition, right pointing arrow background assumption, is one of the most reliable transitions in learning. The first real lift. When the hydrofoil lifts, the waves don't disappear, they simply stop dominating the ride. The same thing happens here. You may still feel stress, pain, or challenge, but they no longer pull you under as easily. Attention lifts just enough to create space. Friction drops. Recovery happens faster. Common experiences at this stage include the sentence appearing during difficult moments without effort. A quicker return to calm after disruption. Less mental struggle against unpleasant sensations. A feeling of internal steadiness, even when circumstances are unchanged. This is the beginning of smooth gliding. The role of meaning. This threshold is crossed more easily when the sentence carries meaning. The words my, righteous, and as healing are doing important work here. My keeps the pattern anchored in identity. Righteous signals internal alignment and integrity. Is healing keeps the process open and ongoing. Meaning engages emotional and regulatory systems in the brain, not just language centers. This is why the sentence does more than occupy attention. It changes internal state. The wing is not just present, it is shaped correctly. What this stage is, and is not. This moment of lift does not mean that life becomes effortless. It means that effort is applied more efficiently. The mind stops fighting every wave and begins to skim above them. Importantly, this is not blind belief. This is not denial of difficulty. This is not instant physical healing. What is happening is a measurable shift in attention, emotional regulation, and neural priority. The hydrofoil is working exactly as designed. Staying above the threshold. Once lift begins, consistency still matters, but the effort required drops dramatically. You no longer need to push hard. You simply need to maintain speed. At this stage, your repetitions every day are enough. The sentence may appear spontaneously. Your nervous system begins to associate it with steadiness and safety. This is the turning point of the practice, the moment when motion starts to carry you. Looking ahead. In the next chapter, we'll explore what happens when lift stabilizes, how emotional systems calm, stress reactivity softens, and the ride becomes smoother even in choppy water. For now, notice this moment. It may feel quiet, even ordinary. But it marks a fundamental change. You are no longer pushing through the waves. You are beginning to rise above them. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. Chapter 6. Stability above the waves. Once a hydrofoil lifts, something remarkable happens. The ride becomes smooth. The waves are still there, sometimes large, sometimes chaotic, but their impact is dramatically reduced. The boat no longer reacts to every swell. It glides. This chapter is about that kind of stability, the phase where lift is no longer occasional but reliable. Lift changes the nervous system. As your repeated sentence becomes familiar and automatic, it begins to influence systems deeper than thought. The nervous system, the body's internal regulator, starts to respond differently to challenge. The sentence does not just occupy the mind. It carries meaning, and meaning engages. Emotional processing centers. Stress response systems. Automatic regulation of breath, muscle tone, and vigilance. When the sentence is experienced as calming, reassuring, or stabilizing, the body begins to treat it as a signal of safety. Over time, this changes baseline reactions. From reactivity to recovery. Early in life, many of us learn to react quickly, to tighten, brace, worry, or resist. These reactions are not failures, they are survival strategies. But they are costly. They keep us riding low in the water, absorbing every wave. As the hydrofoil wing does its work, you may notice less immediate tension during stress, quicker recovery after emotional disruption, fewer lingering stress responses, more space between stimulus and reaction. The waves still rise, but they pass beneath you more quickly. This is not suppression. It is regulation. Why the sentence becomes a stabilizer. At this stage, the sentence has become associated with a specific internal state, steadiness. Each repetition reinforces this pairing. Eventually, simply thinking the sentence may. Slow your breathing. Soften muscle tension. Reduce mental noise. Stabilize emotion. This is known as a regulatory cue, a signal the brain learns to associate with balance and repair. Just as a hydrofoil wing automatically adjusts flow beneath the boat, the sentence begins to adjust internal conditions without conscious effort. Selective attention, a quiet shift. Another subtle change begins to occur: attention bias. Your brain naturally filters experience. As the sentence becomes familiar, the mind starts to notice moments of ease, signs of resilience, subtle improvements, sensations of steadiness. This does not mean ignoring difficulty. It means the mind no longer orients exclusively toward threat or breakdown. The hydrofoil does not deny the waves, it simply changes what dominates the ride. Riding choppy water. Even with lift, there will be days when the water is rough. Fatigue, illness, pain, or emotional strain may temporarily reduce stability. This is not failure. Even hydrofoils slow down in storms. What matters is that the wing remains in place. When conditions improve, lift returns more easily than before. The system remembers how to rise. What this stage gives you. By this point, many readers report a steadier emotional baseline, fewer extreme reactions, greater confidence in their ability to cope, a sense of internal support. These changes are not dramatic in the moment, but they are profound over time. Stability compounds. Smooth rides become the norm rather than the exception. Maintaining smooth flight. You don't need to repeat the sentence constantly. At this stage, quality matters more than quantity. Use it when stress appears. Let it surface naturally. Trust the wing you've built. You are no longer forcing lift. You are maintaining glide. Looking ahead. In the next chapter, we will address a difficult but important topic: pain, discomfort, and unavoidable challenge. We'll explore how the hydrofoil metaphor applies when the waves are not just emotional, but physical, and how lift changes your relationship to suffering without denying it. For now, notice the smoothness, the reduced drag, the sense that life no longer hits quite as hard. This is what stability above the waves feels like. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. Chapter 7. Navigating the waves, pain. Some waves are small and passing. Others are heavy, persistent, and impossible to ignore. Pain, physical or emotional, belongs to this second category. No metaphor can make it disappear, and no sentence can erase it by force. A hydrofoil does not eliminate the ocean. It changes how the boat meets it. This chapter is about what happens when the waves are real, ongoing, and unavoidable, and how lift alters the experience of friction. Pain and the mind. Pain is not only a physical signal. It is also shaped by attention, expectation, memory, and emotional response. The brain areas involved in pain overlap with those involved in threat, meaning, and identity. This is why pain often grows louder when we are afraid, exhausted, or tense, and why it can soften even briefly when attention shifts or the nervous system settles. The repeated sentence does not block pain signals. What it does is change how much of your system is recruited by them. Reducing friction, not denying sensation. When a hydrofoil lifts, the hull is no longer dragging through the water. Resistance drops dramatically. The waves still exist, but the energy they steal from forward motion is reduced. In the same way, this practice may help reduce the emotional amplification of pain, the constant monitoring of discomfort, The mental struggle layered on top of sensation. Many people describe this as pain becoming less central, even if it is still present. Attention as lift. Pain naturally pulls attention toward it. This is protective, but exhausting. As your sentence becomes a familiar, automatic pattern, it offers attention an alternative place to rest. Not as distraction, but as anchoring. The sentence provides a stable identity cue, my spirit. An ongoing process is healing. A sense of alignment, righteous. This combination gently draws attention away from threat vigilance and toward regulation. Over time, this can quiet the brain's alarm systems and reduce the intensity of the pain experience. What research suggests? Studies in pain neuroscience consistently show that attention strongly influences pain perception. Meaning and expectation can amplify or soften sensation. Calm nervous system states reduce pain reactivity. This practice works within those principles. It does not promise cure. It offers relief through reduced friction. When pain is chronic. For those living with long-term pain, the value of this approach is not escape, it is sustainability. Lift allows less constant bracing. Fewer cycles of flare and crash. More usable energy for daily life. The sentence becomes a tool the nervous system recognizes. A cue for steadiness when the body is under strain. Using the wing during pain. When pain arises, do not force the sentence. Let it surface gently. Repeat it slowly without expectation. You are not trying to overpower the wave. You are allowing the wing to reduce drag. Even a small amount of lift matters when conditions are rough. Honesty matters. This practice will not remove all suffering. It will not replace medical care or erase injury. Any book that promises that is selling fantasy, not stability. What it can do is change your relationship to pain, from constant battle to navigated terrain. And that change alone can significantly alter quality of life. Looking ahead. In the next chapter, we'll explore how the repeated sentence begins to move beyond regulation and into something deeper, identity. How the wing and the hull start to feel like one system, and how that shapes perception, behavior, and resilience automatically. For now, remember this. You are not failing because the waves exist. You are learning how to move across them with less resistance. That is what hydrofoils were built for. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. Chapter 8. Identity as hull and wing. By now, the wing is no longer something you consciously deploy. It appears when needed. It stabilizes you during stress. It reduces friction during pain. Something deeper has begun to change. This chapter is about that deeper change, identity. A hydrofoil is not just a wing bolted onto a boat. The hull and the wing work together as a single system. In the same way, your repeated sentence is no longer just something you say. It has begun to shape how you experience yourself. From thought to self-description. The brain treats identity-linked information differently from ordinary thoughts. A passing idea can be ignored. A belief can be debated. An identity statement is protected. Over time, the sentence, "My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body," is no longer processed as a suggestion. It begins to function as a self-description. Not because it has been proven, but because it has become familiar, meaningful, and emotionally coherent. Why identity is so powerful. Identity guides interpretation automatically. When something aligns with who you believe you are, the brain favors it. When something contradicts identity, it requires effort to sustain. As this sentence becomes encoded, the brain begins to interpret sensations through a lens of coherence rather than threat. Respond to challenge with stability instead of panic. Guide behavior toward care, patience, and resilience. This is not conscious decision-making. It is background orientation. The role of my and righteous. Two words play an outsized role here. My establishes ownership. This is not abstract healing, it is yours. Righteous signals integrity and alignment. It frames the core self as stable and trustworthy. Together, they shape a quiet assumption. There is something in me that is fundamentally aligned and supportive. That assumption changes how the mind meets difficulty. Hull and wing working together. At this stage, the hull, your sense of self, and the wing, your repeated sentence, are no longer separate. The hull provides stability. The wing provides lift. Together, they guide motion. This is why the practice feels less like effort and more like orientation. You are no longer steering every moment. The system is doing what it has learned to do. Behavior changes without forcing. As identity shifts, behavior follows naturally. People often notice more patience with their body, less self-criticism, greater consistency in self-care, a quieter inner dialogue. These changes are not imposed. They emerge because the system now expects coherence rather than breakdown. What identity encoding is not. It is important to be clear. This is not self-deception. This is not pretending pain doesn't exist. This is not blind optimism. Identity encoding does not deny reality. It organizes experience around stability instead of threat. Why this takes time? Identity changes slowly because it is meant to be durable. Quick identity shifts tend to collapse under pressure. Gradual repetition allows the brain to accept the new orientation without resistance. Just as a hydrofoil is tested over time in varying conditions, your internal system is learning that this wing holds, even in rough water. Looking ahead. In the next chapter, we will explore what happens when this system is fully established, when lift is no longer something you think about, but something you live. Automatic lift. Reduce drag. Effortless glide. For now, notice how the sentence feels less like a tool and more like a familiar presence. Hull and wing are working together now. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. Chapter 9. Automatic lift, when motion carries you. There comes a point when the pilot no longer thinks about the hydrofoil. Speed is steady. The wing is engaged. The boat glides effortlessly above the waves. Attention shifts from managing the system to simply moving forward. This chapter is about that phase, when lift is no longer something you create, but something that carries you. When effort fades. Earlier in the journey, repetition required attention and intention. Now the sentence often arises on its own, during stress, fatigue, or moments of uncertainty. This is not because you are trying harder. It is because your brain has learned what works. Automatic lift means the sentence surfaces without effort. Calm follows more quickly. Emotional recovery is faster. Less energy is spent resisting experience. The system is doing what it has been trained to do. The brain at this stage. At this point, the sentence functions like a default pathway. Competing thoughts still exist, but they no longer dominate attention as easily. The brain favors what is familiar, emotionally coherent, identity consistent. Your repeated sentence now meets all three criteria. This is why it feels natural rather than imposed. Living above the waves. Living with automatic lift does not mean a problem-free life. It means that problems do not define the ride. People often describe a quieter inner world, greater emotional bandwidth, more resilience during illness or stress, a sense of internal support. These are not dramatic changes. They are cumulative. The hydrofoil does not announce itself. It simply reduces drag. The role of trust. At this stage, trust replaces effort. You no longer need to monitor whether the sentence is working. You've experienced enough lift to know that it will engage when needed. Trying to control it now would only reintroduce drag. When conditions change, there will still be moments when lift feels reduced, during exhaustion, grief, or intense pressure. This does not mean the wing has failed. It means conditions have changed. The advantage now is memory. Once the system has learned to lift, it relearns quickly. Speed returns. Glide resumes. Effortless does not mean passive. Automatic lift does not mean doing nothing. It means doing less of the wrong thing. Less bracing. Less fighting. Less self-monitoring. Energy that was once spent on resistance becomes available for living. What 6 months can do. After several months of practice, many people find that the sentence no longer feels like a sentence at all. It feels like an orientation, a background sense of coherence. This is the hallmark of integration. Hull and wing move as one. Looking ahead. In the final chapter, we will step back and look at the full journey, what it means to live as a hydrofoil, how to maintain lift over time, and how to return to it when life slows you down. For now, notice the ease. You are no longer pushing through the waves. The motion is carrying you. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. Chapter 10. Mastery of the Sea, Living as a Hydrofoil. Mastery does not mean controlling the ocean. No vessel ever does. Mastery means knowing how to move through it with efficiency, stability, and trust in your design. To live as a hydrofoil is not to escape the waves of life, but to meet them differently. What mastery really looks like. By now, you understand that lift is not an event, it is a relationship between motion, structure, and attention. Mastery looks like less resistance to what is happening, quicker recovery when things go wrong, a steady internal orientation, even in uncertainty, trust in your capacity to adapt. The sentence you've practiced is no longer something you use. It is part of how your system moves. Returning to lift when speed drops. There will be seasons when speed decreases. Fatigue, grief, illness, or change can slow any vessel. When this happens, the answer is not force. It is return. Return to the sentence. Return to steady repetition. Return to gentle attention. The wing does not disappear. It waits. Because the neural and emotional pathways are already built, lift returns faster than it did the first time. Living with the waves. Some waves are large. Some arrive without warning. Mastery does not prevent them, but it does prevent being overwhelmed by them. When lift is established, waves pass more quickly. Friction remains low. The ride stays navigable. This is the quiet victory of a well-designed system. Adapting the wing over time. As life changes, your wing may change too. You may keep the sentence exactly as it is. Adjust words to match new understanding. Return to the original sentence, during difficult periods. There is no single correct configuration. What matters is alignment, repetition, and meaning. Why this works? This practice works because it respects how humans actually function. Brains learn through repetition. Nervous systems respond to meaning and safety. Identity shapes perception automatically. The hydrofoil metaphor holds because the process is mechanical, not mystical. Lift emerges when the conditions are right. What this book has not promised. This book has not promised permanent calm, pain-free living, control over life's storms. It has offered something more realistic and more valuable: reduced drag, greater stability, and the ability to keep moving forward. Becoming a hydrofoil. To become a hydrofoil is to accept the ocean and still rise. It is to install a wing that lifts attention above turbulence. It is to trust repetition over force. It is to know that even when the waves are high, you are not designed to sink. You were designed to skim. A final return. If you take nothing else from this book, return to this. Lift is learned. Stability is built. Smooth movement is possible. And when the waves come, as they always do, you already know how to meet them. You become a hydrofoil. And you skim over the waves. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. Thank you for reading. Thank you for exploring how a single sentence can lift your mind above life's waves. Your willingness to practice, observe, and experiment is what creates real change. Remember, progress is gradual, lift is cumulative, and every small repetition matters. May your mind glide smoothly, your attention stay steady, and your life feel lighter and more effortless. With gratitude. Tony Egar. Brisbane, Australia. Become a hydrofoil. Change your brain. With one sentence. My perfect righteous spirit is healing my body. Introduction: Why lift matters. Everyone faces waves.